Starmer. So basically, he's at a supermarket today, and he'll be talking about family finances and that sort of thing. But yet, big threat towards family savings.
Well, ever since this campaign began, people have been trying to pin down slippery Starmer on what potential tax rises might be coming down the track. We all know that taxes are very likely to rise in the next Parliament if Labour are to fulfil their spending pledges. Same goes for the Tories, by the way, or anyone who gets into government. This is not just a Labour issue. And Starmer's used this kind of weasel wording. Maybe it sounds like it's come from a focus group. He says that there are no plans to raise taxes on working people. But what is a working person? You know, that to
Well, he was asked to define it specifically, wasn't he? And in his definition, he said it's someone who relies on public services, so therefore doesn't use private health or private schools, and does not have savings. And according to the Resolution Foundation, 2 in 3 people have savings of more than £1,000 and 1 in 8 use private healthcare. So he's talking to a very small proportion of working people.
Exactly, and you know, most people would think a working person is everyone that works, but actually no, it's a lot wider. So the Tories have obviously seized on this and are going hard with it, saying that, you know, potentially Starmer's going to tax your savings, or, you know, raid your savings. I mean, there are many tax rises that Labour hasn't fully ruled out. They've again used this sort of weasel word. We have no plans to raise council tax, no plans to raise fuel duty, or no plans to raise capital gains tax. That comes into play, capital gains tax. That might sound like it's just for business people, but if you have, you know, a second home or something like that, that could potentially come into.
Or is that
play.
Landlords as well?
Or landlords,
yeah.
So a large number of people.
Ian Duncan Smith, he said, how unbelievable to say those who generate wealth, work hard, are successful and add huge value to the British economy, to dismiss them completely. The old socialist in there who supported Jeremy Corbyn is still alive and well.
I think it's a bit much to call Keir Starmer a socialist. I mean, I'm not sure that he has any particularly strong beliefs.
He was pressed yesterday, Fraser, on whether or not he would have served under a Jeremy Corbyn cabinet had Jeremy Corbyn won at the last election, and he said yes.
I think it's obvious that he would have. We all knew that he was campaigning for Corbyn to be Prime Minister twice. I think, I don't know why he can't give a straight answer on this one. You know, it seems...
Well, the answer's straight enough to anybody who's got savings, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, so people look and they say, we try and do the right thing. We're hammered left, right and centre. And then if Labour get into power, they're going to stick their hand in our wallets. That's what's going to happen.
That is always the fear. But I guess, you know, if you look at all the parties, what are they proposing? You know, there will probably be tax rises under a Tory government as well. It might just fall on different people.
Well, no, they're baked in the budget, aren't they? Because they're not unfreezing those tax thresholds. What about this latest poll? 115 seats for the Tories. That gives the Labour Party the biggest post-war majority. And, you know, then you see the Prime Minister yesterday campaigning in a completely safe Conservative seat with a majority there, 25,000 at the last election. What is he doing?
I mean, it's extraordinary. We've seen so many of these polls now that we've almost become almost numb to the fact that this would be, you know, the worst Tory defeat possibly in history, you know, and the biggest Labour victory in history, on the basis of Keir Starmer, who is not necessarily that beloved by the public. You know, they're almost winning by default. Essentially, Tory voters seem to have gone on strike. The big change is that many of them, they are not coming out to vote, or some of them are switching to Reform. It's not that they're necessarily switching to Labour that is creating this kind of huge gap in the polls between the Tories and Labour. But yeah, this would be absolutely extraordinary. You know, some polls you've seen put them on 90 seats, which would be absolutely devastating. We're talking about, you know, a once-in-a-century wipeout, potentially catastrophic for the future of the party. You know, this election, as in some ways it's been a very dull election because we kind of feel like we know the outcome, but actually by the end of it, it could reshape British politics for a generation or longer.
What are you talking about? Reform, getting muscles?
I think, you know, if you look at some of these polls, some of the MRP projection polls, they show Reform getting, you know, around 7 seats or so, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it could be a base for them to become the official opposition. And then who knows? You know, could there be a merger with the Tories? It's something that Nigel Farage hasn't ruled out, to, you know, kind of unite the centre-right and the right. This election could, you know, throw up something potentially very exciting.
What about Boris Johnson? We'll be talking about him a little bit later in the programme. It's his 60th birthday today, I'm told. And he's not changing his holiday plans. It's a big birthday, big holiday, and he'll be returning to the country, I think, just 2 days before the general election. Is that a snub to the Conservatives, a snub to Sunak?
I think he probably doesn't want to be associated with such a badly run and frankly losing campaign. I mean, he has done some things. He's written some letters. He's endorsed 50 candidates individually, been doing sort of videos on their behalf, and he's done his Mail column warning about the dangers to the Labour Party. But yeah, he has been absent from the campaign trail. I mean, is that in part because he blames Rishi Sunak for essentially him losing his job? Rishi says that Boris campaigning would make a big difference. I mean, there might be some truth in that. Certainly Johnson is more popular than the Prime Minister, certainly among 2019 Tory voters and among Reform voters, even if Boris Johnson isn't actually popular with the country overall.
You say that, I have to say, on GB News Your Say, I was really interested to see the response, because you'd assume quite a lot of our audience would be Boris fans. And a lot of people yesterday, just when the mention of him was being brought up, really haven't forgiven him for what they perceived to be lying. And betrayal was the word that kept coming up time and again, and I was surprised to see that.
I suppose, a lot of people are blaming, Rishi Sunak, for instance, for high levels of immigration, which is what a lot of people are turning against the Tories for. But really, the roots of that lie with Boris Johnson's government. So it makes sense that people are sort of adding the two together. You can't entirely blame Rishi Sunak, who's only been here for 2 years, for the woes of a government that's been in power essentially for 14 years.
Okay.
Well, Fraser, hold on to a lot of what you've said there. People will be discussing that, and we'll discuss with you again later on in the programme. Thank you.